Hi, thanks for tuning in. We have a Boulder County market update for you with Anthony and Tucker at Land Title.
All right, let's dive into this thing. Remember, this is your one that we're kind of taking a lender's perspective here, so you guys are kind of looking into this. The one thing I think that's changed the most is our active units of inventory this year versus last year have been on a steady decline for about 5 months. So with inventory skyrocketing so fast and frustrated sellers out there, it's just been a lot of expired listings, even though, it's not a healthy number of under contracts, but it's the same as we've had for a few years. November was a really unique one, though, because the under contract number slipped about 8% year over year, and the average sales price is really rearing its ugly head as we've seen some price compression in the market with so much more competition from the seller side.
That's right. And so let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about our detached and attached markets and the active inventory. And what we really saw is in detached, we had a 20% month over month change. So we had a lot of inventory come off between October and then into November. So that's a huge drop. But what's interesting is we're still up 15% year over year. So while we had this massive decrease in inventory month over month, we still are way up over 15% up compared to last year. And then really where we want to take a look at this, where did we see the most inventory come off the market? We saw a lot of detached homes in Superior come out of the market. Same with Erie, same with Boulder and Niwot. A little bit more of those higher price point areas saw more active inventory come off the market. Compared to the Lafayette, Longmont, Louisville, they still had double-digit decreases in active inventory, but it wasn't as significant as the rest of the county. So there's still a little bit more opportunity in those areas.
If we talk about attached, that's a whole different ballgame because a lot of that compression had already taken place. If you remember, a year ago, we started to see a massive increase in inventory. So it's been a little bit of a different situation, but same basic philosophy. Inventory hit its peak in June. It came off for 5 months. Now, places that should be a little more surprising than others is Lafayette has been taking the cake with more inventory, right? Lots more inventory, lots more competition. That's led to more price compression in that marketplace in the attached market. Superior and Louisville were so high last year that they actually had a major decrease in inventory this year, which is a really good thing, I think, for those homeowners there. And then, of course, lastly, Boulder is sitting about 5% more inventory than it was before, which actually is largely more luxury inventory, surprisingly, than the stuff that we saw a year ago. So we're kind of seeing some big shakeup in that marketplace. The one that I think we wanted to talk about too separately is the
what we're still seeing is that month supply of inventory. We saw a decrease coming from October into November, pretty significant decrease. We're down under 3 months supply of inventory.
This is for detached.
And this is all for detached. Thank you, Anthony. But really, when we look into our sub-counties, really Boulder's still much higher, almost at 4 months supply of inventory. But then it's our Louisville, our Lafayette, Superiors, Eries, Longmonts that are under that 3 month supply of inventory. And they're even really moving quite quickly out in Superior based on how much inventory came off the market and the active supply. There's been a lot more, there's a lot lower kind of that ratio, that month supply of inventory number over in Superior. So for your buyers shopping out in Louisville, Lafayette, Superior, you're going to have more competition. Whereas, hey, we are Boulder, Niwot, there's going to be just more inventory compared to the level of competition.
Plenty more to look for. Now, if you look at the attached market, this is the flip side of the coin, right? This is the part where everybody out in the county has had more inventory on. The only market that has really dropped lower than everybody else is the Louisville and Superior markets. Like I said, they've had so much of a decrease. They're in the 3s, but everybody else is 4 or 5 plus months of inventory. And it's just a lot sitting there because there's just not a lot of buyers for it. And, we'll show you some of the sold numbers, and it's not pretty there either. So this is a tough market in attached right now.
So looking at our days on MLS, it's pretty much the same for attached and detached, right? And remember, it says 66. It's probably higher because this is only once something goes under contract that we have this data point.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff sitting on the market, right?
That's been 120, 150 days, still no action. They're not going under contract, so they're not showing up. But when we look at our submarkets, right, what areas are moving faster? What do we say had the tighter month supply of inventory? Lafayette and Superior both have a tighter month supply of inventory, so they're definitely moving faster. Whereas area like Erie is really, and Niwot's always a little bit of an outlier because of their inventory size. But you really look at Erie, even higher days on market, and there it's almost all detached. So we're just kind of noticing that the sub-counties or sub-markets have a little bit of a split based on how competitive the areas are. But really, buyers have a lot of time to go pick and get that second look on a house. So
every year I always say everybody that's an investor should buy a Christmas house because it is the absolute best week of the year to buy homes, right?
People are motivated if you're on the market right now.
All right, so let's talk about actives and sold by price range. We put these together as well because the most of the market is kind of encompassed in this one feeling and style, right? I mean, we really just have a lot of inventory sitting from about 1.5 million all the way down. Every price range has a ton of inventory out there, but the only ones that are moving the quickest are very clearly like 6 to 800,000, 800 to a million. And those are markets where I think you got a lot of frustrated buyers that are just coming back to market, right? Interest rates are a little bit better than they were last year. They're just tired of waiting. So you're seeing a little bit of active increase there. The higher end luxury stuff is really interesting because the 3+ million market got real on their price and dropped their prices enough to where we've seen a ton of sales this year from 2.5 to 3 million. Now that's up, 77%. So that's like 30 sales in that part of the market. So the luxury market really has seen a lot of sales, but it's largely due to price drops in the marketplace, where the lower end of the market, that attached product is probably a lot of this reason, has just been crickets in so many ways. So lots of slower activity there.
All right. So looking at our month supply of inventory on the left, we can really see how much of that is a function of cost. Once we really hit that, 800, or really once we get even to that, 1.5 million, that's when we see the big jump. So really for your buyers under 1.5 million, whether that's combined financing, different versions of financing and cash, they're going to have more competition than your folks over that 1.5. So anybody who can stretch that over that 1.5 to really that 1.7, 1.8, there's a lot of good inventory in there and not as much competition, especially as they go further up in the price bands. But really that extra 400,000 jumping up from really it's about 1.3 to 1.7 is where there's a lot of extra inventory. And so there's a lot of good opportunity in there. Now looking at our days on market, kind of across the board, it's really just based on what went on the market and when sold. So I don't want to dive too far into that.
All right. So if we talk about the attached side of it, like we talked about, a little bit more of the flip side, obviously there's a lot of competition in the affordable stuff that's in detached. You talk about the attached, and it just seems like the buyers at every price point have less interest, right? The interesting part, though, is the good product. Think like a townhouse out in Erie, or that's newer, right? Or like something in Lafayette or Louisville that's been rebuilt, or stuff in Longmont on the side where it's all like attached townhouse, kind of fits in that median price range. They tend to be moving just like the detached product. So I think you can take some takeaways here. The other side of this is if you look at the high-end luxury, a lot of Boulder stuff, think about this like walkable to Pearl Street, newer development stuff that's attached. That stuff is genuinely like about as hot as it gets, right? I mean, there's not very many in-betweens. So if you're selling an older product that's attached, you might struggle, right? Because people aren't looking for size. If they're looking for luxury, they're probably looking at homes as well. And they may just be like, you know what, we only are going to be here for a month a year. Lock and leave makes more sense. So depending on whether you're comparing that luxury market or the median home buyer market, they can be very, very different. But I do expect the attached market to do a little bit better next year.
I mean, it can't really do any worse.
No, and prices have gotten more and more realistic. So as prices continue to come down, I think as we look at this, we could talk about this here. I'll do attached first, just because since we're on the subject. I do think that across the board in Boulder County, attached product has probably suffered over a 3-year period, probably about 15%. It really seems like a slight compression every single year over and over. If we look at the year-over-year numbers, they're a little misleading right now, but our month-over-month numbers tend to trend very differently. Now, it's really different by marketplace, right? The city of Boulder is showing trailing 12-month numbers that are way better than they should be. And it's largely because we've sold so much luxury in the city of Boulder. That number can swing $100,000 a month or more because, like, November is a really good example. In November, the average price was $670, but the average over the last 12 months was basically $660. And so as you look at it, that's a pretty big increase. But the other part of this, too, is places like Lafayette in the last 12 months have seen a 10% drop in prices. But there's not the swings there, right? Because the product type doesn't exist for luxury attached. So you've seen that. You've seen Longmont see about an 8% drop in sales price over the last year, and Superior 6.5%. Places that have done well, think Erie, very flat because we've been building a lot. But I also think the builders have absorbed some of that, and it's just not showing very well. So it's all over the board. But Tucker, tell us about detached because I think this affects more of our clients.
Yes, right, because Boulder County really is all about detached. And when we're looking at our sales prices, yes, we've been compressing. Yes, we're continuing to compress. But where we're getting thrown off a little bit is the month over month because, hey, we had a good month in luxury, and then that super luxury did really well in that. We had 3+ million sales. when we're compressing our overall, sample size, it just makes it those outliers and that luxury really pull us up, pull us to a higher sales price. But even with that, looking at our year over year and our TTM change, we're seeing a decrease, and we're going to probably continue to feel that really through the beginning of the year, maybe even to that second month of the year into February. But once we start getting those bunch of that new inventory that's been put back on, refreshed, updated, hopefully we'll start seeing some more stabilization in rates, and which will lead to a stabilization in prices. So really, as you guys know as lenders, what your rate does affects home prices. So I think right now there's a pretty strong correlation to a higher interest rate and sales prices decreasing over the last few years. As we see the market change, hopefully next year with rates, right, we'll see a little bit more of an increase in sales price. So that's where you can help be your, that canary in the coal mine with your clients. Hey, rates are really starting to drop. We're going to get a lot more competitive. Prices are going to go up. That's a great way to talk to your clients about why now is a great time.
And now is the absolute best time in so many ways. Let's look at sold units, Tucker. This is detached single family. You want to talk about this?
Yeah, let's just go over this real quick. What we can see is we had a really strong, August, September, October. November, we weren't as bad as we thought we were going to be in detached, considering how fast buyer demand dropped off. Expected pretty low to December in comparison, but year to date, we're up 6% in sold units in detached. I know a lot of you say it doesn't feel like that out there because your listings are sitting, but we are up year to date, and I think that's a positive thing to try and take away from this market and this year is we did beat 2024 in our solds.
Yeah, I mean, we thought we'd be a little bit higher than that, but as interest rates were a little stickier than expected, here we are. And the other side of the coin is the attached market, and as it has continued to suffer more and more, November surely didn't help the total solds, but we're down 5% year over year, year to date in sales, right? So basically comparing all of last year to all of the prior year. Now it's done a really different thing in multiple cities. The city of Boulder suffered a year ago because of its price point, right? It's more expensive. It really took its hit a year ago. So it's really recovered just a little bit. And a place like Lafayette, that was just gangbusters last year, is taking the largest hit there at minus 17%. That and Longmont at minus 21%, right? So certain parts of the market definitely are feeling the pressure still. But, obviously you can use this to go out there and say, look, it's been 3 years of this. It's time to go out and find and actually get you qualified and go out of the gate early, because we do know that it definitely will change the entire market conditions as buyers come back to market. And so we've got list of sale prices, the last thing to talk to you about. And I just think the stability in this has really been misleading. Right?
Yeah. So, and this is where, right, we haven't seen a lot of movement month over month. It's a 0.05% change,
right.
By sub-market, by price point, excuse me. There's some change here and there. Luxury, there's a pretty large change. I think that's finally catching up and being a little bit more reflective of where the actual sold to list price is in the luxury market, that $3+ million. But below that, where we're really running into issues is there's a lot of concessions that aren't showing up in this data. And yes, we've come off of where we were averaging over 100% back in COVID in those hot markets down to 97, 98%. That's still a really high number. And your sellers would go, great, yeah, I'd take 97% on my starting price. But that's the issue, is it's not based on the starting price. It's based on the price in the MLS when they went under contract, and it doesn't show concessions. So as a lender, keep pushing for your 2-1 buy downs, your concessions. Get those
buy downs, right?
Yeah, permanent buy downs, and
because the seller's going to end up paying for them. I mean, and they don't really need to cut the price too much, because everybody seems pretty realistic on their price these days. And if they're not, they're doing price drops to get there. So, I mean, obviously you can work with your buyers to help and see that, but we see so many price drops in the market, and with the concessions numbers in 65% last month. You can't hurt to ask, because I think the rest of those are probably cash.
And I think this is a great value add for you to take into the new year with your relationships with all of your agents out there. Really talk about how to use those concessions to help back you, and how to really maximize those concessions that are available. Because that's something we always see is how we have the concession, how do we use it?
That's right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like the YouTube channel so you can hear everything from us. But this is Anthony Tucker at Land Title, and reach out to us if you need any other data. We're always here to help. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.